God. Okay. Give him a chance to join. Good morning, good afternoon everybody now. Welcome to the 85th episode of the IEP Live Learn Lunch. Our session today will be running from 12 to 1. It is a recorded session. We ask that, as per usual, those that attend normally make use of the functions as your videos and your microphones are switched off for this session. The session today is by Society Matters and is hosted by Lee Booth and Adam Matthews, who will be presenting the topic of can you really combine caring and work. As I've said, the session will be recorded and will be available for anyone to view post-event in about 7 days on our YouTube channel, where you'll need to search for the Institute of Employability Professionals to find it, rather than just the letters IEP. So in no further notice, I'm going to hand over to Lee and Adam, and please do pop any questions you've got into the chat. So I'll stop sharing.
That's great, thank you very much. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. So good afternoon. My name's Lee Booth from Society Matters, as Emma has just kindly said, and I'm here with my social welfare expert, Adam Matthews. I don't know if you just want to say a little hello, Adam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant, and we'll hear from Adam shortly. So thank you very much for joining the session. So just to look at what our objectives are going to be as we go through the session. We're going to look at caring and employment facts. We're going to look at ethnicity, gender, and work-related demographics. We've got a case study that we can review. We're going to look at steps to maximise income and to get further help and support. And then we're going to be able to answer any questions that you may have at the end of the session as well. So let's have a look first of all at some caring and employment facts. So there's actually 4.87 million people are juggling work and care, which is 1 in 7 workers in the UK. 468,000 people have given up work over the past 2 years as a result of caring. And that's nearly 600 people a day that are giving up work. I'm sure you'll agree that's a huge amount. 39% are in paid work, and of those, 47% work full-time and 53% work part-time. And 21% of carers are or have been in debt as a result of their caring. And then finally, 8% cannot afford utility bills, and 4% cannot afford their rent or mortgage payments as well. And I'm going to hand over to Adam just to go into a little bit more in depth about those facts. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Lee. Yes, so the number of those juggling working care, as Lee mentioned there, is thought to be around 4.87 million. So a massive proportion, that's 1 in 7 workers in the UK. So with workplace support for carers still quite varied across the country, nearly 500,000 people have had to give up work over the last 2 years as a result of caring. So that does equate to around 600 people every day. So many carers face very difficult financial situations with decisions they have to make due to sudden caring responsibilities. And that's despite the valuable contribution that they actually make to society, which is thought to be valued at around 132 billion a year. So just to give you an idea, that's just short of the amount spent by the NHS in 2020. So carers often find themselves and their own income being affected by caring. So, for example, they may have to give up work or reduce their hours to care. And this can be compounded if their partner or another family member has also had to leave work due to their illness or a long-term health condition or a disability. So the carers' benefits, as we know, are quite low in comparison to perhaps the other benefits. Carers' allowance is £67.60 a week, for example, and you can't earn more than £128 a week to be entitled to it in most cases. So that kind of stops a lot of people being entitled to carers allowance that are in work. So in Spain, the equivalent benefits to carers allowance is up to a maximum monthly payment of 833 euros a month. And in Ireland, the rate for working age people is around 219 euros a week. So again, it's significantly higher for carers than it is in the UK when it comes to financial support. So does that mean that carers are undervalued by the government when we kind of take into account the money that they save local authorities and how much they contribute to the economy? Probably so, unfortunately, yes. So many carers are suffering from loneliness and social isolation, quite often poor mental health as well. They often need support to help them to stay into work, and they're often facing their own health problems as a result of their caring role as well. So this is in addition to the financial cost of caring. So 39% of carers last year said that they were struggling to make ends meet, and over 2/3 reported that they were regularly using their own income or savings to pay for care or support services, and that could be equipment or products for the person that they care for as well. So carers that have been caring for 15 years or more, and those who care for more than 35 hours a week, are more likely to say that they're struggling to make ends meet. So 41% and 43% saying that respectively. Over half of carers who are receiving carers allowance, so that's 53%, are also struggling to make ends meet. So this kind of demonstrates that the benefit is perhaps too low. Just under half of carers, that's 46%, say that they just about can afford the bills without struggling financially, but 21% are or have been in debt, as Lee mentioned, as a result of caring. And 8% cannot afford utility bills. And we all know at the moment with the huge rise in bills, I expect that to get worse this year. And 4% cannot afford their rent or mortgage payments. So really is clear that there is more support needed there. Carers who are struggling financially often have to make difficult budgeting decisions and often obviously cut back on spending. So they're people that are struggling to make ends meet. So 44% are kind of relying on their savings. 36% are using credit cards. A third of these carers who are struggling financially are actually into their bank overdraft as well. And 15% are really falling behind with utility bills, rent arrears, that kind of thing. So really important that we do get them that support. Many carers are having to kind of cut back on their independence and luxuries as well, or hobbies. So 47% of carers have actually cut back on anything that they kind of take time out to enjoy. And over 3/4 of carers who are struggling financially have actually cut back on group activities that they may have been involved in or hobbies. So with the £20 uplift to universal credit being stopped at the beginning of this month as well, so that's up to £1,040 a year for some carers, and the current energy price cap, we all know about the rise in energy bills, rise in petrol and food costs as well. We actually found out that a lot of carers were on prepayment meters as well, so their energy bills are actually increasing by around 14%. So when it comes to carers, they really are susceptible to food and fuel poverty, and they really are at risk more than they have been probably in the last 30 years. So it's really vital to make sure that they're not just getting that financial support, but emotional support and respite where possible as well. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate you going further into information. There's a lot of surprise and information in there. I think especially looking at things like Spain and Ireland's equivalent and how much they get compared to the UK as well. That's certainly pause for thought. Okay, so in terms of ethnicity, gender and work-related demographics, 10% of carers in the UK are from a BAME background. 60,120 BAME carers in England are in poor health, so that's a 0.6 higher than white British carers. 241,320 BAME carers juggle low-paid work and care, and 58% of carers are female, with 42% being male. And women have a 50-50 chance of providing care by the time that they're 59, compared with men who have the same chance by the time that they reach 75 years old. So interesting statistics there, Adam. Can you just go a little bit further into that for me, please?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So worryingly, the report did find that 60,120 BAME or ethnic minority carers in England are in poor health. So this is slightly higher than white British carers. And every year, 180,000 ethnic minority people become carers as well. So the research shows that perhaps ethnic minority carers provide more care proportionately than white British carers. So that puts them at greater risk of ill health, loss of paid employment, social exclusion, and certain groups also experience greater levels of isolation, namely the Pakistani and Bangladeshi carers, and clearly, obviously, more support is needed there. So it is evident that ethnic minority carers also face barriers that perhaps other groups do not. And these consist of coping with language and literacy barriers, the stigma of caring for particular conditions. So, for example, HIV or mental illness in some cultures, and knowing who to turn to for support as well. Also, in addition, many refugees and asylum seekers have a hard time understanding the health and welfare benefit and social care systems as well. And they may also have had traumatic experience of dealing with the state, having experienced war or persecution or conflict, as we've seen with Syrian refugees, for example, in the UK. We also know that unpaid carers take a huge burden off the NHS and local authority when it comes to spending, as we mentioned before. When it comes to ethnic minorities, that's 87 billion a year, and that's the equivalent of up to 41% of the local authority spending on social care. So they make a huge contribution as well. So unfortunately, like other groups as well, ethnic minority carers are more at risk from poverty in the UK. So the majority of carers that are working of working age, and nearly a quarter of the carers from ethnic minorities are juggling low paid work and care as well. So obviously, perhaps they're not going to be entitled to carers allowance in them circumstances. And obviously, the welfare benefit system can prove even more difficult for carers and can provide even more barriers. Ethnic minority carers are at more risk from discrimination in the workplace, so balancing being a carer and working becomes more perilous for them than it perhaps would for white British people if they were to ask for flexible working, for example. So we also found that females or women are more likely to be carers than men, so 58% of carers are female and 42% are male, but these figures can be misleading when you do dig a bit deeper. So the percentage of carers who are female rises to 60% for those who are caring for 50 hours or more a week. And women actually make up 72% of people that are caring and receiving carers allowance. So that kind of signifies that they've got less of an income or caring more than 35 hours a week. Females are more likely to be sandwich carers as well. So this means they're combining elder care and childcare. And it's also more likely that they'll be forced to give up work in order to care as a result of that. Females are also more likely to have given up work or reduced working hours to care, particularly if they're in their 40s to 60s. And women aged between 45 and 54 are more likely, more than twice than likely than men to have given up work to care, and over 4 times more likely to have actually reduced their hours due to caring responsibilities. Importantly, it's also been calculated that the economic value of unpaid carers provided by females in the UK is estimated to be 77 billion a year as well, so huge contribution. Interestingly as well, the gender imbalance does actually reduce amongst older carers. So the gender split is kind of 50-50 of carers between 75 and 84. Carers over 85 are more likely to be male, so around the 60% mark than female, and they're actually more likely to be caring for their partners when they get to aged over 85. So some interesting figures there.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I agree, Adam. But, very insightful. Brilliant. Okay, so let's have a look at our case study next. So our case study involves Ella. Now, Ella is 26. She works full-time with an annual salary of £23,000 until her mother, who she lives with, recently had a stroke. Ella's had to cut her hours at work to part-time to care for her mum over 50 hours a week. And she's also had to take some unpaid time off to try and get support. A manager has said that they cannot offer flexible time at the moment. Now, despite cutting her hours, Ella has been told that she's not entitled to carers allowance, as she still earns over the £128 a week on average, and her mum isn't on any qualifying disability benefit yet. Now, Ella's been told to claim universal credit, but has a 5-week wait and is already behind on bills, and she's in an overdraft at the moment. Now, Ella has a learning difficulty and is struggling with depression, and she feels very isolated. Ella contacted the local authority and is on a waiting list for a carer's assessment, but hasn't had time to look at what support is available due to her caring responsibilities, and she does not know where to start. So with this case study, Adam, can you give us or give Ella a bit of advice on the situation she's found herself in?
Yeah, Lee, so this is a situation, unfortunately, that we deal with quite often as social welfare advisors, and you can really sympathise with Ella, as her whole world's kind of been it's been turned upside down by her sudden caring responsibilities, and this happens quite quickly as well. So we really need to start from the beginning and kind of focus on what the person that's being cared for needs are first, so we can actually help the carer. And this is what we really focus on our Carers Matter course, as it becomes quite complicated. So one of the main reasons for this is there won't be any carers welfare benefits available to Ella actually until her mum is on what we'd call a qualifying disability benefit. So that's another issue. Is obviously that's going to take time, and currently you could be waiting up to 6 months for a PIP application to be processed and the result for that. And if the person is struggling, that's going to take time as well. Also, just to bear in mind as well, that process could be faster if the person being cared for is terminally ill. So they could be paid within kind of 2 weeks, but obviously that isn't the case in Ella's situation and the majority of cases. Another issue is that the qualifying disability benefit application might not be successful. She may need support from a social welfare advisor, having access to the terminology that the DWP are looking for, and backing up your case with relevant supporting medical evidence, for example, is going to take more time. Also, if you're going to have to challenge that decision, potentially you could have to appeal it, and that could add up to another year with no carers' financial support. So really important to get it right the first time round. Ella's also going to have a 5-week wait for universal credit, and we'll have to navigate kind of the complex application process. We know she has a learning disability, so she might struggle with the online application process and be one of the 1 in 4 people that don't actually manage to get a payment within 5 weeks because they've struggled with that process. And that's going to put extra financial pressure on her and her mum as well. Ella won't be entitled to the carers element of universal credit again until her mum is on that qualifying disability benefit. And as we mentioned, that's not an easy task. It's going to take time. So just things that we need to factor in. These are things that aren't going to happen overnight, and it is best to get support. When it comes to the challenge of, if Ella's mum wasn't successful You know, Ella's going to have to go through the application process of applying for personal independence payment, navigate the kind of 38-page form, attend an assessment, and she's kind of already feeling overwhelmed and feeling depressed as well. So if that decision wasn't successful, how's she going to feel afterwards? You know, is she going to kind of give up with the welfare benefits? So a difficult situation. And we also need to take into account that Ella's universal credit will have been cut by £1,040 a year, or £85 a month, or the, you know, kind of the £20 uplift of universal credit as that's ended at the beginning of this month. And she's also going to have to juggle these costs of higher energy prices that obviously everyone's talking about at the moment, rising petrol prices and food, and raises in national insurance as well. Then we've got to think about Ella's employment situation. So many carers are desperate to stay in employment, not just for the extra money, but they also kind of feel less isolated, and it helps with their independence. We kind of know over the news over the last month that the government are looking at UK staff being able to gain the right to request flexible working from day one, but that's not set in stone yet. Many of us are kind of lucky enough to request flexible working, but many of us are kind of unfortunately not. So the TUC said that between kind of 2013 and 2020, the proportion of people who did any kind of flexible working rose only from kind of 26% to 30%, I think it was. And other statistics showed that 1 in 3 requests for flexible working were kind of refused. So on top of this, Ella's at risk of losing a job as well. So that's further isolation, that's further pressure on finances, less independence, and it's also probably going to have a negative effect or impact on Ella's mental health as well. And kind of last but not least, Ella's going to need to navigate support that's available from the local authority and charities for both her mum and herself, and how to ask for it. So she'll potentially need to look into kind of needs assessments, home assessments, carers assessments, disabled facilities grants, respite care, help from local charities perhaps. So the level of support that she gets is going to kind of depend on, you know, how the assessments go, if she's communicated what all her and her mum's needs are, if she knows what her rights are in general. It's also going to depend on the local authority's procedures, and it'll be a bit of a postcode lottery on what the quality of support will be. So again, this is an area that we really need to focus on and get people support with. So, you know, so we don't miss out on vital support or accept levels of support that perhaps are unacceptable for both Ella and her mum as well. Thanks, Lee.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. Okay, so what we're going to do next is look into steps to maximise income and get further help and support. So the first important thing, and obviously Adam's going to elaborate on these points, is to get a full benefit check for both the person being cared for and the carer as soon as possible. Arrange a needs assessment and a home assessment from your local authority, as Adam was just mentioning, for the person in need of care. And get a carer's assessment from your local authority for the carer, and make a list of all the tasks and challenges you face as a carer as well. So over to Adam, just to go into a little bit more detail. Thanks.
Thanks. Yes, absolutely. A full benefit check for both the person being cared for and the carer as soon as possible. That the people that are most kind of susceptible to poverty, as we know. Also to make sure that they're getting everything that they're entitled to financially. You know, we could, you know, we don't all have to be welfare benefit experts. Can use the local citizens' advice, and a social welfare advisor will be able to make sure with kind of 20 minutes if everyone's getting everything that they are entitled to. Also, we have benefit calculators such as the entitled to ones, which were really handy as well. Really important to arrange a needs assessment and a home assessment perhaps from the local authority to make sure the person that is being cared for gets all the assistance that they're entitled to and what they may need as well. Really important to make a list of all the person's care needs, whether they're actually being met or not. Really important to kind of try your best not to downplay the conditions that perhaps they have and the needs that they have as well, and to kind of be honest, but thorough, and perhaps asking someone else to check through to make sure you haven't missed anything is always a good idea, what we always recommend. Getting a carer's assessment for the carer from the local authority, really important too as well. So really to make sure that you have you make a list of all the tasks and challenges that you perhaps face as a carer. Again, ask someone close to you to check if they can, as they may be able to help to maybe look at things that perhaps you've missed. Another really good idea is to keep a diary, so you don't miss on all the tasks that you do as a carer, and to really highlight where the support is actually needed before the assessment. And always remember that it's not about you asking to be kind of paid for care, it's about accessing support to enable you to care. So taking some of the financial strain away so you can actually care more effectively for yourself as well as the person that you're actually caring for, really important. And looking for carer support locally, so local charities may be able to help with kind of things such as much needed respite for carers, or help with shopping would be an example, or just somebody to talk to in some cases, perhaps carers getting together for a coffee and talking about the challenges that they're facing can make a really big difference. And this can really help the carer rest and avoid burnout. So it's going to help the person being cared for as well. So carers.org is a really good place to find out what local support for both young and adult carers and citizens' advices should be aware as well. Thanks, Lee.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Adam. Okay, and then finally the last one that was on there, which I missed off, was looking for carer support locally, which I think you've just kind of mentioned there anyway. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about what we've just gone through there? Check on the chat there, see if there's any questions coming through. Okay, so there's a good question that came through there, Adam. So how long does it normally take for an assessment for carers allowance?
With carers allowance now, it's a lot easier to actually make a claim. So you can actually make a claim online, and there wouldn't be a physical assessment for carers allowance itself. So the main qualifying conditions now is the person is on the qualifying disability benefit at the correct rate. So that could be disability living allowance for children at the middle rate or higher. It could be personal independence payment as long as they're getting the standard rate for the daily living. It could be disability living allowance for adults as long as they're getting the middle rates or higher, or it could be attendance allowance for people over pensionable age. And it doesn't actually matter if you're getting the lower or higher rate. So the main conditions are that they're on that qualifying disability benefit, which is really important. And you're caring for them 35 hours per week, and you don't physically need to be with that person 35 hours per week. That includes things such as, picking up prescriptions, doing the shopping for them, perhaps doing their banking and picking things up as well. So this is where a lot of carers miss out. The problem is going to be the waiting time for the person with the care needs to perhaps get on that qualifying disability benefit. So as we know, with PIP, there's quite a long backlog in some circumstances. You could be waiting up to 6 months. So that's why it's really important when we do make the applications for the person with the care needs that we really watertight their case, get supporting medical evidence with that as well. But it's a really good question, absolutely. That's why we always focus on the person with the care needs first, to get them on that qualifying disability benefit before there would be an entitlement to carers allowance or the carers element of universal credit, if that makes sense.
Brilliant, thanks for answering that, Adam. So there is questions coming through thick and fast, which is really good. Next one is, can a work coach refer somebody for carers allowance, especially in your case, where they were studied and they were a vulnerable adult?
Yeah, so a work coach really should take into account if somebody has caring responsibility. So if that was a sudden change in circumstances and somebody was on universal credit, I'd really recommend not only communicating that to your work coach, perhaps for your journal, but also calling the universal credit helpline as well, as soon as them caring responsibilities do come on. If you are caring for that person more than 35 hours per week, and they're on that qualifying disability benefit, or they're waiting to be on that qualifying disability benefit, it's still worth letting your work coach know. Obviously, we don't want people getting sanctioned because they can't fulfill 35 hours work search, for example, because in the mean they're not being able to do that during the time because they're caring for someone full time. So if you have full-time caring responsibilities, whether that's for a family member or a friend, that does need to be taken into account. And that could perhaps put you in the no work-related requirements group as well. So you wouldn't have any work-related requirements. Again, to be entitled to the carers element of universal credit, that person would need to be on the qualifying disability benefit, but that doesn't stop you for perhaps not having any work-related requirement groups while you're waiting for that to happen, if that makes sense.
Brilliant, thanks, Adam. There is more questions. If anybody does have any more, keep them coming in. The next question is, do GP practices still offer support because of the pandemic? And they put, as a carer for over 5 years, it was the only support in the rural area that they lived in then. So do you know the answer to that?
It's going to be different for every local authority, as we mentioned, and I really do sympathise. It's difficult in rural areas as well as some urban areas as well. So as we know, during COVID and still at the moment, it's quite difficult to get an appointment at your local GPs or perhaps a health centre, for example. And what I really would recommend is perhaps having a look at carers.org. They have a really good information on what perhaps is available, help that's available locally. Again, a local citizen's advice should be aware of what support is available for carers locally as well. So really, really important to check with different organisations, and perhaps adult social care as well. The local adult social care may be aware of people that may be able to help, whether that's charities or local authority help as well, whether it's for respite, for example, or but it's a bit of a postcode lottery, unfortunately, and it's always worth just double checking what is kind of available in your local area. But they are some good sources.
Brilliant, thanks, Adam. Okay, we're not finished there, there's more. So is there any emergency funding for those who have to wait for so long and could potentially lose the housing?
Really good question. And as we mentioned before, carers quite often are below the poverty line. So specifically when it comes to housing, one thing that we would look into would be discretionary housing payments. Carers would be in the vulnerable category, and so would the person being cared for. So if people do have rent arrears, and this is good advice for people that aren't carers as well, and they are struggling with the costs, or they're being hit by the bedroom tax, we can ask the local authority for discretionary housing payment, which means the universal credit could be topped up for a limited amount of time while perhaps we get them rent arrears sorted, or we find more affordable accommodation. So you can apply to your local authority for discretionary housing payments. Again, if people need support with that, a local citizen's advice will be able to help. Again, there's local sources of government or local authority funding that could perhaps go towards help. In Gateshead, for example, we've got the Child Support Fund that would perhaps help in them circumstances. If there was children involved in the situation as well. And every local authority will have different sources and pooling. It might just take a bit of digging work, and again, a local citizen's advice will be you know about local grants as well that may be able to help with rent arrears, and just to make sure people get a full benefit check again, to make sure they are getting their full housing costs, what they should be getting, you know, whether they should be getting other costs brought into the household through welfare benefits, because a lot of the benefits are underclaimed. So definitely worth getting a full benefit check whenever there's a change in circumstances, or if you see that someone's income is low as well. There is some government funding as well that started this month. Again, some local authorities have started to put this on their website. We had kind of like the Winter Support Fund last year. There's a similar support fund now, which is supposed to be helping with kind of energy bills, and carers as well would fit in the vulnerable category. So again, it's just worth checking your local authority website, but local citizens' advice would probably be your best bet.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Adam. Okay, does anybody else have any further questions? No? Okay, well, I'd like to thank you very much for joining both myself and Adam. And obviously you can find out more about Karen and Karen in the workplace, whilst working, sorry, and lots of other stuff on our website, which you can see in the background. So thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you for our next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Adam. That was a really good session, really enjoyable. As I could just say to everybody again, we will be uploading this onto our YouTube channel within the next 7 days. So if you think that this would have been a good session for one of your colleagues, get them to come along, subscribe to the channel, and they'll get a notification when it's uploaded. So in the meantime, we hope to see you next week for our 86th edition, which is being hosted by APTEM. And in the meantime, have a great week and a great weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Take care. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.